Welcome to On the Prowl. Keep calm and Maurice on, episode 30. I'm your host, Bill. Today we're going to take a look at how the Panthers fared during the month of March. We're also going to take a look at their upcoming remaining games. We're going to talk about the players that are currently out right now, and we're going to take a look and see where things stand as we head into the playoffs. Now, the first thing I wanted to go over here was early March for the Panthers. In early March, they fared very well. They had a 5-game winning streak at home. The game that you don't see was the game against Edmonton that didn't fit on the calendar here. But 3 of those wins were shutouts. A lot of those were very tightly contested games, and you could see the game against Tampa. That was a great game. It was 2-1. The game against Edmonton was 4-3. That was a tightly contested game. Now, right after they finished that, they went on a 6-game road trip. And believe it or not, it was the longest road trip of the season. Now, they did have a break between the games against the Islanders last Sunday and the game this past Thursday against the Blue Jackets, and they did come home. However, they did not fare well during this road trip. They won 2 games and they lost 4 games. And I think some of those games were extremely frustrating to watch from a fan standpoint. I know the game against the Islanders, they were up 2-0. They ended up, it was 3-2, but they had an empty net goal. And then yesterday's absolute total debacle against the Washington Capitals. It was just, and by the way, as a side note, they lost all 3 games to the Capitals this year. So that's just kind of like put that in the back of your pocket. But it was not a good road trip for them. So here's where we're at as far as the remaining games in the schedule before the playoffs this year. Okay. Now there are 12 games remaining. The Panthers have 7 games at home. They have 5 away games, and they both have 4 consecutive games at home, and they have 4 consecutive games away. Now we're going to take a look at the games that they have outstanding, who they're against. They have 2 each against Montreal, Detroit, and Toronto, and then 1 each against Pittsburgh, Utah, Ottawa, Buffalo, and Tampa. Now, I think some of the games, every game is going to matter at this time of year. I think the game against the Blue Jackets, which the Panthers won 1-0, really encapsulates the kind of games I think when they're on their game. Yesterday was an aberration against the Capitals, but I think you're going to see very tightly contested games here on out, playoff type atmospheres like we did in Columbus. Neither team gave either much room in that game. That's why it was a very tightly contested, well played game on both parts. The Blue Jackets played very well. And as a quick side note, I think many of you know I lived in Columbus for 30 years. I was a Blue Jackets season ticket holder, and I'm very proud of the way they have handled this season. They have played very well. It's been a playoff year for them. Every game's been like a playoff game for them. And they have nothing to hang their heads about. They have a bright future to look forward to. They have a core of great young players. And the only way that organization is going to go up. And with Dean as their head coach, the sky's the limit for them. So just wanted to kind of add that as a side note. But every game coming up here is going to be a playoff type atmosphere. You're going to see 1-goal games, 2-goal games at the most in terms of a differential. They're going to be tightly contested. There's not going to be a lot of ice space. There's not going to be a lot of room for either team. They're going to be very much on top of their games here, just to kind of give you a representation of things. Now, obviously, I think some of the games, every game's important, but I think the 2 games against Toronto, the game against Tampa, the game against Ottawa, these are games. Obviously, every game's a must-win right now. As Paul said the other night after the game in Columbus, we haven't done a thing yet. We haven't clinched a playoff berth. So we still have to play hockey, and we still have to play well. And he's very right in terms of regards to that. But I think some of the games that they really want to focus on here, the games against Toronto, the game against Ottawa, the game against Tampa, those are the ones that are, approaching them in the standings, and they need to be very mindful of that. And I'm sure Paul will make them very well aware of that as they face the schedule coming up here. Now, one of the things I think a lot of people have talked about, and before we get to this slide right here, one of the things I want to talk about is Seth Jones. Okay, a lot of people have been commenting on him and how he's been playing and everything. yesterday in the game that I'll just call an aberration, he scored his first goal as a Panther. But one of the things I wanted to point out is, he has been thrust into a role with Dmitry Kulikov having to go on injured reserve for a while, of coming in and filling in some top line minutes and being a quarterback on the power play. He wasn't expecting to have to do these things, and he's here, and he's all of a sudden, and he's thrust into this situation. Now, remember, as Paul Maurice had said this week, Seth Jones came from a completely different system, how they played out in Chicago versus how the Panthers play. The Panthers play a very unique type of system. So he's had to adapt, and he's had to learn that. He's picked up a lot of minutes, and I think the game against Columbus was one of his best games this year so far for the Panthers. He's adjusted really well. He's taking in these minutes, and I've seen a lot of people very critical of him. And kudos to him. He's stepping up. Okay, we're missing two of our core defensemen, Aaron Ekblad and Dmitry Kulikov, and he has stepped up and he has filled in the gap very nicely. So kudos to Seth Jones for that. A lot of props are off to him. He's really picked up the pace. He's really done a great job, and I think that's something fans need to appreciate. No, you can't replace Aaron Ekblad, okay, and you can't replace Dmitry Kulikov, but you can get players in there to rise to the occasion, okay, and that's what Seth Jones has done, and I think the rest of the defensive core has risen up as well too. Okay, so give them some props for that, and I'm excluding the game yesterday against Washington because that just wasn't something I think any of us, we don't want to see this again. Okay, is how I think Paul Maurice put it. Let's we hope the game against Pittsburgh, we hope we don't remember what we did yesterday, kind of a thing. So that needs to be in the rearview mirror. And also too, playoffs are coming up, and before we get to some of this stuff right here, one of the things I wanted to mention here is you need to put these games in the rearview mirror, and you need to get these, what you'll call these bad games, out of your system before you hit the playoffs. You might have a bad game or two in the playoffs, and that's okay, but you really kind of got to purge these out of your system here. All right. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, they're tired and everything. Yesterday was not. They just completely fell apart. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about that yesterday. And I saw one of the comments from somebody out on Twitter was leave that game in DC, complete team breakdown, one of the worst games of the season. I can allow some grace because they're still without some key pieces, but man, they got to get their together in the next few weeks. And he's right. And I thought, for me, and my remark back to him was, the only positive I think I saw, there were very few positives yesterday, but one of the only positives that I wanted to acknowledge was that was Mackie Samoskevich. Mackie played a great game. They bumped him up. Paul said he wanted to go ahead and get him up on that first line. He did, and he did well, okay? Mackie's had this where score a goal one game, not score the next game, score a goal the next game kind of thing. He's going to find the net more. And I think the future is the limit for him. The sky's the limit for him. He's going to be fantastic. I think that's kind of where we're at. All right. Now, Florida Panthers players currently out of the lineup here. Okay. Brad Marchand, and I think the latest I've heard is maybe next week, maybe late next week, he might come back. He was listed as week to week when we acquired him from Boston. So I think people need to kind of keep that in mind. I think with Dmitry Kulikov, I think it's going to be closer to the time of playoffs. So I don't think you're going to see him anytime here in the next couple of weeks. I think the same, obviously, with Matthew Tkachuk. I think it's going to be when we hit the playoffs that he'll be ready, hopefully, and then Aaron Ekblad, we all know his situation, and he won't be coming in until the third game of the playoffs because of his suspension here. So, yeah, from yesterday, I had two takeaways from this. Ovi didn't score, and I was thrilled about that, and I'm sure a lot of people are. And the other one, looks like no one was injured. That's it. Okay. Really, in essence, that was it. All right. You really want to get out of that game as fast as you can without getting anyone hurt. And apparently no one, as far as I've seen, and I've been out on Twitter today, I haven't seen anything as far as any injury updates from the team regarding anybody from the game yesterday. So that's what you want in a game like that. You want to put it in the rearview mirror. You want to get it out of your system, and hopefully you get out of there unscathed in terms of injuries. And I think the Panthers dodged a real bullet with that. I could not be more pleased with that. Now, really kind of sat and thought about it because a lot of people yesterday and lately with some of these games that we've lost, like the game against the Islanders last weekend and some of the other games on the road trip, like against Boston, okay? And I put there, it's becoming more and more apparent that the Panthers miss Ekblad, okay? And it's becoming more and more evident that what he did was not one of his brightest moments, really costing his team. And it's true, okay? In this day and age, there's a million things I could say right now. A lot of times, like Sudafed will come up and get listed as a ped, and if he tested positive for that, who knows? Okay, but I'm basing what I said here off of the statement that he gave when he was suspended. That he was taking something and he maybe should have checked with the team. Yeah, he should have. Okay, and it ends up it's costing him right now, and it's costing us. I mean, granted, it's costing him quite a bit of salary. Okay, 20 games is nothing to sneeze at in terms of the salary that he gets each year. So he's not getting that money. All right, and it's really costing his team. All right, and I'll just call it like it was. It's very selfish. I know he was hurting. And that's the time you go to the team doctors, you go to the team medical personnel. You get what you can be able to take and not test positive for performance enhancing drugs. Okay, period. All right, you get that from them. You don't go out and do something on your own. You keep pressing them to get something that you need here. So I'm going to say that how this is going to play in the future as far as a contract bearing out. Now, I did see some people comment on that, and one of the things that I have to say about that is, it's going to bear into how much he gets offered in the offseason, okay? Because I don't think they're going to do anything regarding renewing a contract for Ekblad until after the season, all right? And I think this is going to kind of weigh into that fact is, what this incident here and what happened. And yeah, it's a black mark on him. I'll say that. I absolutely would love to re-sign him. And I think because of this, I think we'll probably get a discount from him. If I don't think he wants to leave the Panthers, so we'll kind of see where this ends up going. But I think this is where we're at regarding that, and it's a very unfortunate situation. And and now with Dmitry Kulikov out, really it's putting us in a bind times two with two key defensive players out. So now here's a couple of comments, quotes from Maurice, from Rob from the Panthers social media department. Maurice, we'd like to play 500 or better on the road. We failed to do that, but we won't fold the season. Okay. And he's talking about the latest road trip. Obviously, they won 2 and lost 4 on the road trip. And he's very well aware again, and the whole reason I entitled this episode is I really think Paul Maurice has ice water flowing through his veins because he's one of the calmest head coaches I've ever seen in any sport. Okay. You watch him before practice, before a game, after a game, doesn't matter. He's unflappable. Okay. And the only time I've ever really seen him show any emotion was after they won the cup last year. But he's very calm, cool, and collected. And I think we all as fans can learn a lot from something like that. Okay. Now, well, Rob also had a quote from him, Maurice on Verhaeghe's 400 NHL game. He's a guy that's hard to scratch, had to scratch and claw his way into the league. He plays with just about everybody in the very big games is when I think his best game comes out. Because I've seen a lot of people really complain about the salary and the terms that they offered Verhaeghe. And I think what you have to do is Paul really brought this into context here, okay? And you've heard him say it a number of times. I think you've heard Zito say it a number of times as well. This team is built for the playoffs. They're not built for the regular season. They're built for the playoffs, okay? And you're going to see these players shine, especially, and I posted a lot on Twitter this week about Sergei Bobrovsky. His time to shine is during the playoffs, okay? And, a lot of people were detracting about him and everything. And, he posted another 1-0 shutout, against Columbus, and that he made some exceptional saves during that game here. So again, I think Verhaeghe, he rises to the occasion during the playoffs. His best is yet to come. So, keep everybody just, kind of keep that under your hat here. Now, of course, you guys know my penchant for Cats and Bolts podcast with Rod and Serena. They're the number one hockey podcast in the state of Florida with good reason. They're the best, okay? And Rod and Serena, they do a great job. So kudos to you guys, all right? And they talked about, Rod led this in with that the Bolts are going on a heater right now. And I kind of agree with Serena here, where she talks about it. And obviously, guys, you need if you haven't subscribed to them, make sure you do. They are, again, there's a reason they're the number one hockey podcast in the state of Florida. They do a great job, and they're both fantastic people. And anyway, here, okay, she's really of the opinion, can they win the division? It's possible, but she doesn't really think so. And I agree with her 100%. And I think Paul has put it so well. And I'm going to say this, okay? And I just got through with saying this, okay? The Panthers are built for the playoffs. Sure, you want to play well enough in the regular season to put yourself in a good position for the playoffs. I prefer my team to go on a bender or a heater when the playoffs start. Go Cats, okay? And that's exactly what you want, okay? You want them playing well. You want them to put themselves in a good position for the playoffs, okay? You don't necessarily have to win the division, but second place would be nice, okay? That would be great. If they win the division, great. I'm not going to complain, all right? But if you get second place, that would be fine as well, too, because you're going to get home ice a lot of the time during the playoffs, okay? So you want to put yourself in a good position to win in the playoffs when it hits. Now, a lot of these teams that have gone on heaters, and I'm going to give you a great example here, okay? The Washington Capitals, they've been a house of fire. They have been playing fantastic, all right? And we know, what was it, a few years ago, they won the President's Trophy, and what happened? Boom, they were out in the first round, all right? Now, they're a different team from last year. Granted, they did some acquisitions, signed some people. They're playing well, even outside of Alexander Ovechkin. They're playing well, and I agree. They're getting good goaltending. But the time to get hot is not in the regular season. The time to get hot is after the regular season starts, all right? And historically, Washington has really, in the first or the second round, they really haven't had any deep runs in the Stanley Cup playoffs until they won the cup, all right? So historically, they haven't done that. And I kind of see the same thing here. Like I said, I think they're a good team. They're very skilled, but I think they can be stopped. And one of their things that they like to do, and was pointed out yesterday, Goldie pointed this out very well, and so did Randy, was, they try these stretch passes. Well, there's defenses against that, okay? And I think the Panthers got caught in that loop, all right? And they weren't defending against those stretch passes, and boom, you saw what happened. That's the result that happened yesterday. And oh, by the way, the Panthers set a team record. That's something they had never done before. They never came from 3 goals behind to tie in a period ever before. This was the first time they'd ever done that. That was a stat. And this actually hasn't been done in the NHL since 2018. So that's something you can kind of put in your bank there. All right. All told, okay, where are we at here? Panthers will be fine, okay? They're going to be getting back Marchand, Kulikov, Tkachuk, and Ekblad in short order. And everyone's patience is going to be rewarded. Now, I know somebody said, oh, yeah, we're going to end up, our patience will be rewarded. We'll end up getting Washington in the first round. No, you won't, because that's not the way. I mean, we would have to bottom out to get Washington in the first round. So that's not going to happen. But your patience will be rewarded, okay? When you see them hit the playoffs and they're healthy, okay, and you have, imagine Marchand and Tkachuk on a line together, okay? Just think about that, all right? Think about it, all right? Yeah, in a healthy Aaron Ekblad and a healthy Dmitry Kulikov, okay, getting them back as well too, and combined with some of the pickups that we've got, and our backup goalie, Vitek, okay, he's a great guy. Do not take yesterday what he did, as, oh, he's horrible. He's back to his ways with San Jose. No. Yesterday is a game you just need to open up the garbage can, put it in there, and take it out to the curb, okay? Because that's how you want to remember yesterday's game. That was not a game that you want to keep bringing back up and up again. But no, this is the thought of the day. This is something, and I put this out there, and I've gotten an incredible number of likes on it. As of the time that I posted this was 94 likes, and a lot of people had positive comments on that as well. And one of the things, let's go ahead. I'm going to see if I can find and share a couple of those comments with you from that post from yesterday, because I thought it really kind of, like I said, I think it really encapsulated where things are at. All right, the rat line is going to be unleashed in April. Chemistry doesn't happen overnight. My concern is that the D looks slow and disorganized. Too many breakdowns on D, too much reliance on outside shooting. We need a presence in front of the net. Sometimes we look old and slow. And my response back was, keep in mind we're missing two key players on defense right now. Seth Jones is getting better each game. No one played well on Saturday, but it's going to take time. When we get everyone back, we'll be ready for the playoffs. And then I had another comment, exactly. Everyone hitting the panic button will be telling everyone in June they knew the Panthers were going to run it back. Okay, there it is right there. And then somebody responded, our patience will be awarded playing Washington in the first round at the rate we're playing now. Well, they're not going to bottom out. So I don't think we have to worry about that. And another great comment, get healthy, get off suspension, play your game, repeat. Okay. And then a real good note was, amazingly, they didn't lose any ground to the Leafs and Bolts since they both lost last night. They will rebound. And I think that's something I think we can all kind of take to heart right now, is the ability for this team to rebound. They're playing the Penguins tonight at 6 o'clock at home. Then they don't play until Friday against Utah at home later this week. And historically, after games like this, they have done well. They have responded well. And I expect them to respond very well, too. Now, Pittsburgh's been playing. They're not the doormat they were earlier in the year. They are playing better. They won most recently against Columbus. Poor Columbus. I just really feel for them. It was a decent game against Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh played better, and you just have to watch. Pittsburgh has some up and coming rookies that are doing well. They're getting some half decent goaltending, believe it or not. And Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic, they're playing better. Jerry got sent down to the minors. He was put on waivers. Nobody claimed him, got sent back to the minors, AHL, and he's actually played half decent. But I expect the Panthers to rebound well. I expect them to win today. I don't think that will be a problem. And like I said, they're playing Utah on Friday this week. So they have a few days off this week to rest and recoup. Hopefully we'll get some good news about Marchand. He would be the first one likely to come back in terms of players coming back. Kulikov, from what I'm hearing, it's probably going to be closer to playoff time. And I think that's obviously going to be the same thing for Tkachuk, because he's on LTIR and you can't come back until the playoffs for that. So all in all, nothing to look down about. And I think I'm going to kind of close with this. I saw somebody had posted and it was from a post from a year ago. It was almost exactly a year ago. And the Panthers were in the same type of situation. Of course, different players, different circumstances, but they had a losing streak, okay? And March did not treat them well. I think they had a losing record in the month of March in 2024. So fast forward to a year. I mean, they played better, I think, this March than they did last, but still, they had this road trip was an unmitigated disaster, 1-2 and lost 4. But we're moving forward here, okay? And we know what the schedule holds. It's going to be tight. These games are going to be tightly contested. Each game is gonna be like a playoff atmosphere. Even these games against like teams like Buffalo and Detroit, they're going to be important, and they're going to be scratching and clawing and fighting for position as well too. So this is what we have to look forward to for the rest of the year. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Stay tuned, as I'm going to be having some extended coverage during the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. And let's hope it's a nice deep run into the month of June like it was last year. As always, guys, it's a great day for Florida Panthers hockey. Time to hunt.